Hi, I'm Audrey Szychulski, founder and principal of the AJS Consulting Group. I'm here today with Peter, our strategy communications analyst expert and all the guru of things. So today we're going to talk about a new thing that AJS Consulting is doing. We're starting these quarterly videos to help better educate you and keep you informed on many of the things happening in the nonprofit world, and especially in certain trends, which is why today we're going to start with AI.
Happy to share some experiences here and really passionate about the topic of AI and any type of workflow integration into real organizations and real businesses. My background is I'm originally from St. Petersburg, Russia, immigrated here when I was 16. So I was born and raised over there. I have started my business with my business partner about 21 years ago. So we've been in branding and web design and digital outreach business since the start. So our forte, so to speak, has always been in really identifying needs that clients have, and a lot of our work is done with nonprofit organizations, municipalities, school districts, and such. So our goal is always to understand gaps in their operations, and through marketing, through systems design, through web, through digital outreach, try to make them meet their goals more effectively, and align with their mission through kind of every project. So no cookie cutter things that we're bringing out here. It's a lot of strategy and understanding the technology that makes the strategy go a little bit further than you would expect.
And here at AJS, we're just really excited to have Peter newly joining our team, just adding all this depth of more services that we're able to help provide to all of the nonprofits that we serve. So I hope that for our intro to today, you have a better concept of what this new series is going to be about, and we're excited to start sharing more.
What would be some of the good and bads that you've experienced in just the last couple of years since AI has become prevalent in everyday uses for even nonprofit organizations in your area?
It's a great question. To me, it's one of those things that it definitely has the good, the bad, the terrible, as you and I have talked about. And it's also one of those things that everybody just knows is everywhere. So it's important to embrace that we should be using the tools that are there. We just need to be using them responsibly. So especially I'm going to focus very much on grants at this point in time. And I'll actually start with terrible grant research. Horrific. ChatGPT, any AI, I have yet to find one that's good at grant research. One of the things I've personally done to test it, because I want to make sure that we're still relevant as consultants in what we do and it's not getting rid of us, is I've described a client like in detail, geographic specific, serving of adults, exactly what it is their services do, and asked it, my friend, could you give me a list of the grants that they should be applying to? And as I learned from another good consultant friend of mine, always to ChatGPT, dear my good friend, because we do know they're going to take over the world. So, when ChatGPT gave me back a list of grants, they gave me 5. For anybody that's ever met Alexandra on our team or seen any of our grants calendars, you know that typically we can find you 50 to 150 things to apply.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
not
So that's
only
a big gap.
that's a huge gap. But then not only did they only give me 5, and I picked a Denver area client as our headquarters. We're headquartered out of Colorado Springs, but we do a lot of work in the state. I wanted something that wasn't exact to what, who we are and what we see every single day. But they gave me 5, and right off the bat, I knew they weren't qualified for 3 of them. Like
Hmm.
one was only for children, and this was an adult program. One was only for people in a county in Western Colorado. Like another one I knew was a government grant. And then the other 2, when I paused to look, one turned out it was for a college, and one was like this bizarre in-trade marketing grant. So no
Hmm.
cash value to the client. Actually gave it the feedback. This is why all 5 of these grants are wrong. Could you make other suggestions? And it gave me back 5 more that were completely inappropriate.
So I totally see the funny thing here is that from technical side, from technology side, and use of ChatGPT for very similar features, it's a great tool, right? I'm not asking it to develop extreme flows or build web pages from your databases, but I am asking it to do some research and say, hey, more like checks and balances, or bouncing some ideas from. Again, I think the difference that I'm hearing you say is that there's a little bit more of a technical and prudent requirements that, right, the federal government and the state governments will require from grant writing and applications. And I think that that's the human collaboration piece that a lot of folks don't understand that AI still needs. It might not need it in the future to a certain degree, but again, as you reflected and said, listen, these 5 didn't work, here's the reasons why they didn't, right? That learning process of input versus the AI learning you and expecting different response next time should be something you aim for. So I definitely see that there's a differentiator in everyday tasks versus technical field where you definitely want to either have that calibration on the front end to where AI is told very clearly what the task is, so the research turns out to be more informational, or at the tail end when you need to check and vet everything, right? Especially from grant writing and the list as you have. So that's very interesting to point out.
And you made a great comment about at the end with reviewing and helping other things. One of the things that I'll admit that, when I'm doing a massive government proposal that's like 40, 50 pages long, you can always use a little upload feature, on ChatGPT, and upload all of it or black out what you shouldn't be sharing for ethical reasons. And then say to it, do I sound redundant anywhere? And here's a copy of the guidelines of the grant, do you think I met all the rubrics? And to use it for the
And
betterments.
I think alignment and those ethical checks, as you're talking about, is very important, right? Because even from, let's say, from the marketing perspective of everyday use, you might have a summer intern, you might have somebody helping you write your articles or anything related to providing that search engine optimization component to promoting your website or your organizational goals. Again, if your entire strategy is written by AI, and then the content is generated by AI, and there's very little oversight and that human calibration, that's where it almost becomes too generic, and it's right. And I feel like that maybe where the regulation will come in, because some fields, as you're saying, there's private information, there's industry specific information, and there's a whole bunch of other red tape that usually comes with rules and regulations. But nevertheless, protecting privacy, protecting all that information, and furthermore, not putting out other information that's inaccurate. Again, because, right, somebody created the strategy plan through ChatGPT that was given to another person on staff without, an assumption is that somebody vetted this, right? Because there's accountability, there's transparency.
In grant writing, we say that, the 2 most important things, a little that we talked about before, researching, because you should only be applying for the things you're eligible for. And then the next part is you need to actually answer the question you've been asked. So it's almost as like, in a lot of ways, AI, if you don't give it all the direction, it's kind of like that adolescent child that's just going to keep telling you all these different things, where if you take the time to educate it, it could become your strong partner over time, but we still need to make sure we're not assuming. We still need to go back, double check it. We still need to help put in, as you've said several times, that personalized tone. AI doesn't know how to sound like the client. When we spend so much time with the people we're working with, we pick up some of their mannerisms or things that they say, and it's not going to add those personal touches.
You have to be cognizant of automation, you have to give it guidance, and then you also have to checks and balances on top of it. So, for example, in my personal everyday use of AI outside of the tech field that I'm in is really is checks and balances. Again, sometimes I joke that ChatGPT is my therapist. Sometimes I joke that ChatGPT just checks my spelling because I'm a foreign from Russia, so English is my second language. So sometimes, being in the country for 20 years, it still comes out. So all jokes aside, it helps me be a sharper person because, again, I have trained it to understand what tasks and what responses I'm looking for. And again, sometimes it is you getting a big, as you're saying, they're writing you a grant or a presentation. I need to kind of chisel it down and say, no, I don't want this. I don't want this. I want a very specific response. So what are some of the, I guess, everyday uses that you have come in contact with and your nonprofit clients alike that you could kind of rate what ChatGPT or other AI bots are good at, not so good at?
Planning a trip for myself, and I'm asking it all these questions about like restaurants, directions, places I can take my dog with me versus places I can't take my dog with me, stopping to like double check those things. And just by starting somewhere with doing everyday conversation with it, it almost made it clearer in my mind what it could be good at, as you're talking about these different things. So again, it is not great at creation unless you give it tons of guidelines. But once you create something with it, things that are so helpful, like we've talked about proofreading it, but then also as we're profits so often need to have small staff, need to like save time. When you upload that entire like thing afterwards and ask it to draft your executive summary, can you draft the notes that I need to be giving out to my board members? Can you draft to this attachment that I'm going to need? And again, drafting, totally okay.
So basic repetitive tasks
Yeah.
that we could, okay.
And the other thing it's also really good at is a lot of times when we write grant proposals, we also want to make sure that, or we need and it's required, letters of support. And I've done ones where I've uploaded and said the person that'll be writing this letter of support is the mayor, like sort of thing. Because busy people, they're not going to do it for you unless you draft it first, and then it actually does it correctly with the tone of the important to the city and things like that. And then I've uploaded it and been like, the president of the school board, and you see a different tone yet again, my county commissioner, and all of those things. And if I know these are the things important to that person, like a quick little drop, that one-page template,
You
fantastic.
might have the writing skill set on task, but you don't have a proper image to select, or you might have images from an event and then somebody was not able to eloquently put, two sentences together, which is totally understandable. So I think that's when AI and the visual component comes into play, or even stock images. There's time and place for everything, right? I think that, which is kind of my biggest statement out of this podcast and the video we're doing, is that just don't lose your voice and your authenticity. And then I think AI is here to help. It's definitely here to stay. But again, right, if your brand strategy and your organizational strategy is you're helping families and kids of certain demographics, and that's all your images, you want to expect some connection from your website, from your social media, from those blogs that you're writing. So if you're always using stock images, right, that might be a strategy issue, not necessarily an execution piece. But I think AI is great, again, as long as AI is aware of what the goal is and what the visual might be. I think, writing an impactful blog article about, or a post of some sort about something that matters to your constituents is great, but we're in a visual world, so people want to see pictures, and sometimes it's difficult to conceptualize things. So when you tell AI, I need an image, or even better, to your example, upload the whole article when you're ready and say, I'm about to post this. What would be some imagery that can connote this, and this, but also align with my mission, vision? And by the way, take a look at my website to get a feel of what kind of imagery we've been using in the past.
Again, all that info we have to get it. All the info we have to give it, like continuously. Like it just is so interesting.
I think there's wonderful uses for it. And again, we brought up a few of them already. But as you know, in nonprofits, to me, and in marketing, to me, in communications, it's all about telling story and being able to connect it with one another, with your client, with your potential client, with your target audience. And we often do that as humans through empathy and storytelling. And so again, when you're soft on your voice, right? I was putting proposal together, answering an email, and I sent it my full draft, and I said it's ready to go. I said, this is what I have in the email. Do you have any recommendations? And it literally just jumped out and it said, well, you wrote the email from we, and then all your proposals is from I, right?
Yeah.
Simple things like that, only because my email writing was a little bit more formal. So we talked about the organization, we talked about overarching goals, the team,
Yeah.
when my proposal was more in response to their questions, which was a little bit more personable. So even from those nuances, right? And again, it's strategy. There's oversight at the top, and then you have to check it on when it swings back up to an execution level and see how that works into your everyday operation.
And we're all still learning about it. We could use the Malcolm Gladwell philosophy of to become an expert in something, you need to do it for 10,000 hours. But 10,000 hours is often almost 10 years. It's at this point, we can all say, I use it for this and this is working well, but we all haven't learned everything it's capable of yet, too.
But what would be some
So,
advice that you would give to your nonprofit clients, to other nonprofits in the world out there?
to use a phrase you just used, I think I would encourage them most, because again, so many people are still new at this, to start the discovery phase. Where it's that moment of like I made the comment, I started by talking to it about like a trip. I've also asked it for recipes to bake cookies for my dog who's vegan, sort of thing with all these weird requirements.
Sure.
Yeah, because I have the large vegan dog. So it is that moment of it's really important to start, that I think is one of the things it really needs to be clear to people. This needs to be something we shouldn't be afraid of, because we know that it's going to be more and more involved. So we need to start. We need to play with it, for a lack of a better word. We need to be like, okay, I'm having this really stressful day and I have to draft 5 things and they're just variations on each other. So let me draft one and ask it to help me with the other things that it could be doing. We need to, especially in the nonprofit world, figure out what our time savers are most often, so that we can put our focus at the thing that's going to help our organization the most, and not be doing things where we could have assistance. In some ways, as it's new, and I made the joke earlier, it's still an adolescent. It's
Mhm.
almost easier to every time go in with the expectation that it knows nothing, where it's like, here are things all about my organization. I'm uploading them to tell you about them. Then, like, here are things about the grant I need to be writing. Here are things about the donor I need to be talking to, and giving it as much guidance. Because just like any of us, we only create good things when we understand all the aspects of the project.
Exactly. Well, I mean, the encouragement I would like to give to nonprofits or anyone who's, feet for first into AI. And again, feet first sounds scary, but it's already integrated in most of the things. If you have a smartphone, there's probably 3 to 4 apps that AI is so integrated into it and it's already being used, and you've been part of that. But I guess the encouragement I would like to give everyone is that, right, we all used to or learned or sometimes implants of digital age, but we grew up on Google search and we understand how that works. Right, search got better over the years, and then it got to the point where, wow, there's so much information. And now it's kind of scary because like you don't know what is information, what's true or it's not. Again, the basic use of search engine and search of access of information has always been curated in part by the user, right? Pink flower throw for my living room, best rated one, right? We retail it and curate it, but it was in really like barbaric, clunky. You get one window. If you add one word there, it might get confused. You have to add parentheses to this and that. It went through its evolution process. But my point is that we're all used to search engines being curated, mostly not by you and me, but by search algorithm itself. And we don't question it, we don't doubt whether I do every day, but not an everyday person does.
We've
So
all Googled things forever. We're really, yes, it's that advanced Google that we're now
correct.
starting to.
So at the minimum, anyone is capable of realizing that Chat GPT or others is just an infinite access to all information available to us as humans, which is insane, and it's brilliant, and it's in the same token. But the cool thing about it is that you are more in charge of curating what gets back to you. Again, test the waters, start getting into it, but it's all right there, which is scary. So open the gates safely and close them too, as you said. But yeah,
So we need to remember we're always rechecking it for no, I still need to make sure this is accurate. We need to take our own responsibility in our own part in using AI. And if you're just copying and pasting it directly, colleges now consider that plagiarism. So let's also not make it obvious when you've completely gotten some information out of AI as you're going through.
sure. Well, and like we both mentioned on this video is that it has to be ethical, and it's we are part of its evolution. The whole premise is it's learning how to curtail and curate that information, how to make it available, right? It's all there. Again, but ranking the information, rating it, and doing basic data processing is very important. So as long as you have a critical mind, or you need to just replicate some basic everyday tasks, I think you shouldn't be worried about too much just jumping in and testing the waters.
People want that authenticity that we've talked about. And as someone who's had the pleasure of giving out large amounts of grant money before and overseeing that process, when I read something, I can tell if it's AI or if it's personalized to me. And if I feel it's only AI as a funder, as a human, I probably don't want to fund you. So again, it's that moment of making sure you're really thinking about who your audience is and the emotions of human, while we're still figuring out what we can use the technology with to help us do things faster, more efficiently, and well, but we still need to be in control.